And welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is KTN News Weekend Express, and the conversation continues. The two-third gender bill, and of course the question we are asking is, should the two-third gender bill pass the next time it's brought before Parliament? Engage us at KTN News KE, at Grace Career KE. And of course I did promise that we'll be speaking to Honorable David Olesan-Cock. But first, before we get to him, let us listen into the statement he made on 20th November 2018, the statement that made him famous, the Slay Queen statement.
Ever since I joined this august house, Honorable Speaker, but I have some little reservation. Honorable Speaker, because Honorable Speaker, this may be another way of having slots reserved for a certain category of people that may not be with persons with disability.
Well, Honorable David Olesan-Cock, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Garissa. I did want us to listen to the bit where you got to slay queens and, you know, slaying in Parliament and massaging their way. I would like to know, do you still hold the same thoughts?
You know, I said I support the two-third gender rule 100%. But then we have to have a formula of knowing which category of women will be nominated to fill up the gender top-up slots. Because women are not just women simply because they are women. There is a mosaic representation of women. There are women from rural areas. And we want to have that Wanjiko who carried a jerrycan of water on her back because she knows the importance of having development like tap water. We want to know that woman who gave birth under a shade or in a traditional hut under the hands of traditional birth attendants. They know the meaning of having maternity in health centers and free maternity. We want to know which slots will be reserved for women with disabilities, because they are also women, and there are challenges that affect women with disability that does not affect other women. That is the formula I wanted before we support the bill. And before that formula is given to us, then we will not support, because we will be recycling a category of women, a certain category of women that live in Nairobi. We have seen people even nominating their own girlfriends. We have seen people even nominating their own in-laws. We want to have a total representation of women. And there is nothing wrong for me to say, apart from demanding women with disabilities, a percentage, that is 30%, 30% women from rural areas, 30% women who are under the age of 35, whom we call youth, because they also have challenges that affect them that don't affect other women. So we want those categories to be specified. We also say that we should invoke Chapter 6 like it is invoked across the board for any leadership qualification, that they should be women of integrity. And I still hold on that. And I support the women.
By women of integrity, what do you mean?
And what does the Chapter 6 mean by women with integrity? It's Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is not Sangok saying. It is the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And I've given you even the specific chapter. That is Chapter 6, that we should have women with integrity. Yes, so that we have a representation in the National Assembly that is reflective of what we have on the ground. For a long time, we have neglected women from rural areas. We have just recycled those who sometimes are very good in applying cosmetics and taking baths 3 times a day. And we forget those rural women who are suffering in the villages. We forget Wanjiko. So anyway, and again,
yes.
Look at the leadership of all political parties. You know, we have to be genuine to Kenyans. There is no way my party, Jubilee, and ODM can purport to be supporting women of this country, yet in their leadership, the party leader, the deputy party leader, the secretary general, the chairman, everybody is a man. Let them start by implementing that two-third gender rule in their own political parties. Let us be genuine. Let us be genuine. And again, I will bring an amendment to Parliament in which we only allow the two-third gender rule to be implemented in professional jobs like principal secretaries, cabinet secretaries, and other professional job CEOs, where application is done in terms of merit, that you bring your qualification, you are given a job. But where people slay their way into the National Assembly and massage their way into the Senate, no, my sister, no. No. We have to have a representation of women.
You still hold the same words, massage their way. So basically you're telling us we should have, a specific sort of a strategy in having these women, getting them on board, right?
My sister, everybody have the notion that we should not massage our way into the National Assembly. Even us as men, we are supposed to bring a certificate of good conduct. We should also indicate if you are in CRB. There is specific things that are demanded by Chapter 6 of our Constitution. Using a word that only show you that we need women of integrity. We need women who represent other women. That is what I'm basically saying. And I'm sure 90% of women support me, because most of them are, in fact, 99% of our women are not slave queens. But the categories that are slave queens, they are only 1%, and they are the ones with very big mouths. And they're the ones who are shouting against me.
Sankok, before we let you go, you said 99% of women support you. We have Madam Miriam Ashira here and Honorable Alice Wahome. They are women. I want to know if they support you.
I do not support you.
Just listen to their feedback here.
I totally do not support you. I think the fact that woman has showers 3 times or puts on makeup does not make her less of woman. The woman in the village will soon come to Nairobi. Living in Nairobi does not make you any less. It does not mean you do not have integrity. I think his idea is totally misplaced.
Mheshimiwa?
Yeah, Honorable Sankok is a disgrace to actually the position that he holds. Sankok is a nominated member of parliament, and the reason that he was nominated, I think he feigned to be a person with disability. And I say that with the greatest respect to the disability movement, the persons with the disability movement. The reason that you would occupy that position is maybe you have a voice, you have been heard, you are in a representative capacity. The House of Parliament, the county assemblies are houses of representative. And it is the people who feel that so-and-so is the best of us to be represented or to represent our interest. So when Sankok wants to prescribe a certain integrity threshold for women, he should then have been telling us, who do the women slay? Where are the slay queens? Maybe he's the slay king. Maybe he's a slay king, must have slayed a queen somewhere so that he can be able to be appointed. I think it is regrettable that he has been given a lot of space after scandalizing women in this country. We do not want such voices because he does not inform, and we don't support him. I totally disagree with him. And it's only when it is about women issues that the classes, categories are spoken about. Where and when did we ever sit to say the male colleagues in parliament are representative then of the people of this country? Indeed, when we talk about corruption, look at the quotas. They occupy the largest quotas. What kind of integrity can Sankok, preach to the Kenyan women? We don't want, he's not a representative of women, and he should shut up.
Sankok, Honorable...
No, just a minute. First of all, when I demand women of integrity, of course I know a certain category will be irritated. I'm 100% sure. It is not me. It is the Constitution of Kenya that is demanding integrity for all elective and nominative positions. And even appointive position, integrity is a must. And then again, when they talk about where does men represent, do they come from rural areas, categories, that is why we have constituencies across these countries. We don't select those men in Nairobi. They are elected in every constituency. And constituencies in this country are sparsely distributed. There is constituency in Turkana, there are constituencies in Lamu, they are all across. Now, when you talk of probably electing or nominating women to fill the slots of gender top-up, then we need to have regional balance. we need to have those from rural areas also coming to represent women who have challenges of living in rural areas. What is wrong with when I demand in that? And why are you irritated when I say 30% should be women with disabilities? Why are some people irritated when I say women who are youth? Why are some people irritated when I say women from rural areas? You know, we should not be so much egocentric and selfish to only have a blanket form of nomination that will be a soft landing spot for a category of women when they will be defeated in the upcoming election. Again, I represent persons with disabilities. Yes, that is true. And what we are saying as persons with disability, we should have an electoral college so that even those who will be nominated to represent persons with disability, they'll be elected by persons with disability themselves. I came from being the chairman of National Council for Persons with Disability, currently the chairman of East African Council for Persons with Disability. That is why I hold that position. I need also a clear-cut position for women who will be nominated. There will be no space for women to slay their way into the National Assembly. If you are a slay queen, you will be irritated. If you are not a slay queen, you will be happy. I'm defending you and defending your husband from being snatched by slay queen.
Well, okay. Thank you very much for that, Honorable David Ole Sankok, joining us all the way from Garissa. Of course, it is a conversation that will definitely continue. Thank you, Mheshimiwa, for joining us. And at this point, I want to rope in Mr. Alex Manyasi, who is a governance expert. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We've already talked about so much concerning the gender bill, but I want you to, first of all, respond to what I'm sure you've pretty much heard what Honorable Sankok had to say there. He says the issues of people nominating their girlfriends. He even points out at our leaders saying that most of the positions are filled by men and not women, sort of implying there is no political goodwill for this. I don't know, what are your sentiments following the remarks by Honorable Sankok?
Thank you very much. I've shared several platforms with Honorable Sankok, and I know how he thinks. But he is also very good at reading the minds of a certain category of citizens. And I think that's where he's coming from. But having said that, I guess the part of the reason why he was nominated is because he was a representative of some entity. And that is a person with disability. And so he already had a platform for which he began. And so he had an advantage over the rest of the people that he's talking about, persons with disability. It may be very difficult to say that you will nominate people from the villages. Yes, everybody comes from some village, but at the same time, you need certain criteria and certain platforms for you to be able to do that. However, I think that is where the biggest challenge is. And I think even the Supreme Court said that there's no mechanism for which these nominations should be done. And I guess that is the biggest threat to the whole gender agenda in this country, because how do you ensure that people don't feel threatened? He alluded to something about parties, for example. We know that parties are funded, and the people who hold most of the resources are men. So chances are that the people who influence who becomes nominated and who funds which party will be men. And so because of that, you'll find a lot of bias when it comes to who holds voice in terms of how to manage political parties. And by extension, naturally, you'll find that men will make a lot of those decisions. And by extension, if you don't have a very good mechanism of nomination, then you will end up with men making decisions. And if you have not predetermined how they make that decision, then obviously they'll make a decision based on probably other biases which are not necessarily helpful to the larger majority. And so how do you, for example, ensure that there's proper representation? How do you ensure that the people who are being picked are not necessarily joyriders in the process? There has been an argument that just have women and then think about what the category of women or the quality of the women are. And I don't think probably that is where these guys are coming from. Because when you do that, then you create a platform for abuse. But again, when it comes to the elective positions, it's even more complex. Because how do you tell the people of Kandara, for example, that you are now predetermining that in the next election they will elect a woman and not a man? or in the next election they elect a man and not a woman. So those are things that we must, as a country, deal with. And I guess Parliament as it is today, even the women, if you saw when the bill was being debated, the number of women who showed up, just that tells you that also there are certain women in Parliament today who are not necessarily there serving women, but are serving other people. So that's also an issue.
Mheshimiwa here made a clarification there about.
Okay. Yeah, I think you can see the kind of damage that the media actually can make, because he's obviously referring to information not from the Hansard or from the actual count in the House. He's referring to what the media came out to say.
Which was that it was about 20 women, right? But
while
you did clarify
I was present, and we did a head count, we were 59.
59 out of
in the
76.
House. But the media wanted to show the country that even the women, like Sankok is arguing, are not supporting this bill. But you see, the things that Sankok is talking about, if I know you might want to come back to him, are legislative processes. They are not constitutional processes. We needed to have the mechanism because you see the Article 97 and 98 have specific numbers of the persons who should sit in the House. And therefore, unless we change that threshold so that we can add the numbers, say the number of special seats that will enable the gender principle to that gender principle to be achieved. So the number of seats, of course, that means after the elective general elections is completed. And then you can, within that process, you can provide the list so that whatever deficit is there, then it is filled up. But then the mechanism, how, who, is actually a matter that can be dealt with by the Elections Act, which will provide the conduct, the qualifications. It will provide the time, the period. How do you arrive at who will come to the House?
Okay. Thank you very much.
And I think that's not really a dispute. Even the women themselves would like that.
Yes.
But that cannot be the reason why the two-third gender bill failed, because we had agreed that once this is passed, then we'll look at the Elections Act and then come up with the criteria.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Now, there's a question I started by asking the two ladies here. Why, for a record, the fourth time this gender bill flopped in Parliament? It's been a journey since 2010, the promulgation of the Constitution. So why do you think it flopped for yet another, the fourth time, rather?
Yeah, so the major reason why it keeps flopping is obviously there's no interest from the male folk. And one of the explanation I gave is even the way our political parties are structured. You do, and Sankok actually mentioned it, you do not expect male-dominated political parties who make decisions, who have the resources, who determine who becomes what, even in government itself, to make a determination as to how women representation, because you see some of those seats you're going to create are going to be seats that will take away some of those positions that some of these people are hoping to be nominated into. And so obviously you expect that, and the unfortunate bit probably for us as a country is that anytime you talk about gender, it becomes a women issue. That's the most disappointing part. And so, and even the people who started the championing initially used to look at it as a women issue, and therefore we are pushing women rights, which is not right. And so anytime you do that, then people become automatically defensive. And that creates animosity. So people start imagining that anytime you bring that agenda, then the agenda is about women, and therefore you want to curtail some of their positions, or you want to create positions so that you can overpower the decisions.
Free seats.
Yes.
Free seats.
So when you do that, that is, and I guess if we can get, I wish the leadership of the political parties will actually be in a position to have a sober thinking around that issue. If that happened, for example, and they soberly discussed the gender issue and came up with, because I am not convinced, for example, that Jubilee, ODM, and other political parties, WIPA, that they will tell their members of parliament, we are determined, go past this, and they refuse to pass. I'm not sure that that's the case. Probably they say that, but behind the scenes, the people who run those political parties do not actually mean that. And of course, the chairman or the secretary generals, they know. They know that. And therefore, it becomes PR, and when we get to Parliament, we do what we know best.
Okay. Now, I need to get your closing remarks because we need to be taking a break in a few minutes. But I would like, as each of you gives us their closing remarks, answer the question that we asked our viewers today. Should the 2/3 gender bill pass the next time it's brought before Parliament? Let me start with you.
Definitely, it should pass. It's a constitutional right. It's a constitutional provision. It's not about women. Actually, when you look at the country, there's the whole boy-child movement. And maybe the reason the bill is not passing, but soon, as you can see in the country, women are rising, yes. Now school enrollment, we are almost at the par. University enrollment, we are almost at par. What we want is that we get a way even to contribute to the national decision-making at Parliament level. So for those who are saying it should not pass, maybe soon, men will cry that actually women are more. We need to get our seats back. But if we don't pass this bill, we'll have no chance. So one gender will be left out. All we want is equality when it comes to representation and decision making.
Because after all, it's not only about women.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I'm glad that my brother here has captured the same sentiments. We had said that the political parties have been giving lip service. You know, the leadership of the political parties, the executive in this country, in fact, our government, because this was their bill, should be embarrassed that this particular bill failed, should be accountable to the women of Kenya. And anytime they come with a request, like we support the referendum, the women should first pose the question, where were we when the 2/3 gender bill was lost? So we are telling the Kenyans that the leader of majority, who is the one who leads the government bills, was not sincere in this particular bill, and we will tell him and continue to tell him that they were offering lip service, they are preaching water and they are drinking wine behind the scenes. There was no mobilization at all, and even when we visited them, we knew who and who will eventually not support. And I had said before, and I will repeat, the only person who genuinely supported this is Kalonzo Musyoka. And I'm not, and obviously then that vote was not going to be sufficient. It is true, if they had mobilized and whipped the members at all levels of the political party leadership, this bill would have passed. Finally, you asked me, I think we needed to address the question of even, I needed to say something about Aisha Juma. You can see many sins, many mistakes, many oppositions. There has been a lot of opposition against political party leaderships in different areas by male colleagues. But the first casualty in this particular case is Aisha Juma, because she's saying something that a woman, in quote, should not be saying, while it is obvious that the leader of minority, Honorable Raila Odinga, honestly, at the moment, is not living by the Constitution, because he's the head of opposition, he's the minority leader, and he's right inside the government and working with the government. How can he then be able to stand there and see Honorable Aisha Jumwa being whipped? And you can imagine for Aisha Jumwa to be elected in the coast region and from her community, and therefore I want to say that they haven't seen, I mean, but of course, those who have been in this movement for long, like me, and maybe obviously the FIDA fraternity, where she's the deputy director, knows that this is not a journey where, this is a fight, and this kind of fights strengthen those who are the promoters. We are stronger, and I can tell you, we will come up with other strategies to ensure, because the elephant is that men are feeling their space will be taken. The more women you promote in the House, the more you profile them now for elective, competitive elective positions. So we will come up with strategies to actually go and occupy the governorship. Women will be there fighting, more women than last elections, for all categories of seats in this country. And so therefore, it could be a loss on this side, but it could be a gain for women.
Mr. Alex, 30 seconds, please.
1/3 is a very small number. Even if we had a third of the women in Parliament today, probably they will not make all the decisions that need to be made in Parliament. So in my view, that's a very small number. However, I think as a country, even the rural women of today, Mheshimiwa is lucky that where she comes from is a bit progressive. There are some places in this country where even the women that are elected are actually determined by men. So they will decide and tell the women whom to vote for. So we, as a country, there are many steps that we need to make. And before we get to that point, this discussion will still be there with us.
He needs to know that I was the first woman to be elected in Murang'a. So it is not true that Murang'a or my constituency is that progressive. Yes. But I want to thank them because they actually were able to level the ground for me and accept that I should be elected. Certainly. But obviously it means we ought to have started earlier. But from there on, we have had 2 other women elected in my neighborhood. So we are moving.
Okay. Thank you so very much for joining me, the 3 of you. And of course, we've come to the end of the discussion. I see a lot of your feedback. I will be sampling it at the end of the show. Of course, to stay with us. Up next is International